would be for the council to pay people £300,000, £400,000, £500,000 each, more than their properties are actually worth, and that all that money would would either, as I said earlier, come out of the regeneration deal we've got with Notting Hill, which would result in a hell of a lot less social housing than we've managed to secure, or it'd have to come from our tenants' rents in the HRA, which means we'd have less money to pay to upkeep our existing council properties. So with all those constraints, we strongly feel that shared equity and all the other options that are there for people, for leaseholders, is the fairest way forward to balance off these competing demands.
I'm going to stop you there, Councillor Woodard. I think you've answered the point that was made very well. I'm going to come to Councillor Fleming first, and then Councillor Flynn, and then Councillor Anood. So, Councillor Fleming.
Forgive me, obviously, as the Ward Council, I know quite a bit about this, so I've restrained myself so that people can ask questions. So I want to focus this specifically to this report, and it might be more helpful if Doreen answers a couple of questions as well, and restrain yourself, because it's all quite straightforward. So this report itself covers the CPO decision, which is what we've spoken about this evening, but also the beginning of a demolition contract for Plot 18. Plot 18 is a site where we are building houses pretty much for the first time, and in order to deliver extra housing on that site, that is part of giving people the right to remain on the footprint of the estate later on. We are decanting from phase 2 as we speak, and thus delaying compromises our ability to meet that promise potentially, because we don't have houses to put people in to keep them on the footprints of the estate if we delay this any longer than it needs to. Every day is a problem with that. Is that a fair summary of how urgent the decision, not around the CPO, but the other elements of this report, which needs to go ahead and needs to move on? Is that a fair summary of the urgency of the situation?
Yeah. Every day we delay is one additional day before we can get people into new homes.
Fine. Doreen, there's a point made in here about the CPO decision itself and the decision to challenge it. As I understand it from the report that you have put in here, this is not something, although it was somewhat misleading in the Cabinet papers, that this is the monitoring officer's responsibility to authorise, institute, defend or participate in a legal case and so on and so forth. So it's you, actually, rather than a political decision of the Council to make that decision. It is. So effectively, this committee is, and indeed the Cabinet itself, is powerless to make any recommendations that would alter the course of those legal proceedings, because it is not a matter of the policy, of the political policy of this Council. It's a matter of our legal responsibilities, which you assess.
I think that would be a fair summary.
That is a fair summary. So actually what we're doing is we're sat here talking about our capacity to deliver a cross-party agreed regeneration. We are compromising our ability to deliver enough houses so as we can have the right to remain on the estate for tenants and leaseholders. We are giving people who have perfectly legitimate and not unreasonable concerns some sort of hope that this is in some way going to change the outcome of the process. We are already offering some form of independent arbitration, although I think people have questions about how fair that has been and how well communicated that has been, for the purpose of a blundering, half-witted political point that has been made by the Liberal Democrats, because this has changed nothing. This has changed
June, which was way after the inquiry.
Yes, exactly, yes.
So the Council's brought this in, so hopefully the Secretary of State was putting some pressure, and they thought, gosh, we've got to do something different.
And I thought, great, finally we'll get somebody independent in that can actually see and assess it without it just being the Council saying, this is what we offer you, take it or leave it.
And you're saying in your phase you still haven't been able to access that?
Well, at phase 2, they haven't been offered it.
No, so nobody's been able to access that?
I've got it in writing from the surveyors saying that they haven't offered it to anybody.
Well, we'll explore that a little bit more when we speak to the Cabinet member at the end. So your question is...
Well, I suppose that was part of the question. I suppose the second question is, the Council have obviously made a decision to appeal the CPO's decision to the High Court.
Yeah.
Are you saying that what you would rather is that they did this independent process and that you would agree to that?
Yes,
that's what you want.
As soon as
and they
possible.
Don't need to go to the High Court if they do that.
They don't need to, because we'll get the valuations that we want as quickly as possible. That's what we want. We just want market value, and then we'll move out, and the whole process can move on. Nobody needs to go for the judicial review.
Okay, that's my first question. And then the second question is about the like-for-like option. So there's lots of nods about that, and let me understand, that is basically saying I own a 2-bedroom flat on the Aylesbury, give me a 2-bedroom flat on a council estate nearby.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I do apologise. My name is Joy Nyack-Binns. I live on the Wendover estate, and I came to a meeting here. I'm sorry for names, I do apologise. The gentleman that was sitting, the main spokesman for Southwark, who was sitting there just a while ago, I was in a meeting with him. There was just about 4 or 5 of us in the room, and my question is what I've been holding up at the back. I have a 1-bedroom property. I cannot get a mortgage again for certain reasons. I'm senior, and all I said was, you haven't
paid
offered
off your
me.
Mortgage,
No, not fully.
So you've got a mortgage on
Yes.
your 1 bedroom.
I've said, can you offer me a like for like? That's all I want. I'm not fussed about the valuation or anything. Just give me a like for like, preferably within the area. Yes, I'd be happy, but I've asked for like. And he said to me that he didn't realise that we hadn't been offered that. I said, that's all I want.
So we'll note that down. When we come back to Mark at the end, we'll raise that point again. Tom.
What about increased service charges? What about increased council tax? And the point that was in Beverly's written submission that wasn't allowed to be read out was about, at the moment I own a property. When I die, I pass that on to my kids. What happens with a shared equity property? And that's really important for people.
Right. That's a lot of points there, Anood. Otherwise, it's just going to be a big long
Gavin,
list, and some of it's going to get lost.
No, because the only thing I've asked for so far is an answer about shared equity.
Could you come to the point and ask your question more quickly, because this is going on quite a long time.
Well, I'm sorry, Mark also goes on quite a lot, but that's fair enough. So, my question is about how that shared equity, how you can deal with that and those problems that people associate with them. And the other thing is the like for like, why that can't be an option. Because I think there has been cross-party support for the regeneration generally, and I think there is cross-party support that if people want to stay in the area, which is home, they should be able to. And if that shared equity doesn't work for somebody for whatever reason, can they be offered like for like? And that's the real question to you tonight.
Okay, I think I'll pick out what I think the questions were.
Just about the shared equity and the like for like. We don't need
let's hear the answer.
So in terms of the future of the regeneration, if we don't challenge the decision, we can't deliver, because ultimately we can do everything we can to try and settle on a voluntary basis with leaseholders, but would be in a position where we could have 1 or 2 leaseholders hanging on for as long as possible, wanting more money than their property is worth, even if we got to a lands tribunal, and we couldn't deliver the project. It's as simple as that. In terms of like for like, I think it's important to remember the like for like policy was actually dropped by the previous administration, by your previous administration, pre-2010. The reason why it was dropped was because no one wanted it.
What about
However, just to answer the question.
That's what we want.
If I could just answer Councillor Al-Samerai. So, there are a number of options for leaseholders, as we've heard. Shared ownership, shared equity.
Hang on, look, I need to be able to hear the answers here. If you shout out, we can't hear the answers, so over to the Cabinet.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, if anyone wants to have a meeting after this, then absolutely we can get that arranged.
Come to Paul next.
I mean, I think an awful lot of the things that Anood said sound very reasonable if you'd not just sat through the last 2 hours and listened to anything. Because the thing is that you say, oh well, we shouldn't take a decision lightly that says that we've trampled over people's human rights. Well, now let's be honest. We are talking about human beings here in a number of cases, and of course we must be sensitive to that, and we should be sensitive. But we dispute that we've trampled over the human rights of people on a basis of fact that nobody seems to be denying that a policy was changed, the submission was made and received, and the judgment was not made on that basis of fact. And so when we say, would the borough solicitor have made a different decision if the administration was differently politically minded? She cannot, and absolutely should not, turn around and receive a decision against this council's actions and believe that a point of fact has not been considered and not have it judicially reviewed. Now that's a lunacy. I also seem to be sitting in a situation where, like for like, which I can understand where the appeal of the policy is, but as I understand the way that it would work, would be taking a council property that is currently social housing and handing it over, privatising council housing Privatising council housing is now the policy of the Liberal Democrat Party in Southwark. Well, that's just great, and I'm sure the 35% campaign are elated. Because I'm overjoyed that that's the kind of way that you're treating the length of the housing waiting list that we have. And so let's be clear. We wanted to talk about the Aylesbury. It is important that we scrutinise these things on a cross-party basis. And I don't think that committees like this are places to be partisan. And I try my damnedest, to not be. But in this instance, you have been woefully so. And the levels of distress that it has caused over a meeting that can do nothing over the course of the actions of this council. People meeting me in my ward in tears because they don't think this is going to be delivered, not because of the CPO decision, but because you've called this in and the demolition can't start. And don't shake your head, because these are the people who I represent, who have met me because of your actions. This is not fair. And what we've done tonight is we've heard from a number of people here. And we've managed to hopefully resolve it. And there has been a value, because hopefully, in the case of Julie, there's no reason why she can't sit down with the council officer tomorrow and start her arbitration. Hopefully we've explained some policies a little bit better than they were understood before. Hopefully we've done something for the individuals sat in this room. But have we done anything meaningful for the people beyond this room? And did people come here with an expectation that we could do something that we could not? Yes, they did. You need to read the council's constitution and better consult with officers before you make these decisions, because they're affecting people's lives.
All the members of the committee should probably be aware that we have to request a recording that goes through officers. They make a decision that this is a worthwhile process to have.
You should understand their implications.
And you just admitted that there have been maybe some benefits.